I think the competition for power is higher than ever. And if we do really see a mania or like a frenzy with Bitcoin, reaching some ridiculous all-time highs, then it is very, very likely that it not only will it be difficult to find a miner at a reasonable price, but also very likely you might not have a place to plug it in.
Welcome back to the Compass Mining Podcast. My name is Jarrett, and today I'm joined once again by Adam Budd. Adam was on in December, and we were talking about why now is the perfect time to mine Bitcoin. He was on with another one of his colleagues from the sales team, Colby. Today, Adam is back, and we're going to talk about the 3 reasons and then some other bonus ideas, but really the 3 big reasons why you need Hash online yesterday. So, Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I actually just got 3 miners of my own online a couple weeks ago. So, speaking of getting Hashrate online now, I've done it.
Well, it's always good when you're walking the walk so you can talk the talk. Let's start, and I know we've kind of laid out some ideas here, but let's start with number 1. One of the things you said is like, look, right now miners, dollars per terahash is still very affordable. Can you walk us through the landscape? And it's also great to know that you just got 3 miners up online yourself, and maybe you can walk us through what the kind of the financial decisions there that you made to look at it and say, okay, I think I need to go ahead and get these miners.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still have a great price per terahash, as you alluded to. I mean, those S19 XPs, I think I bought for $11 a terahash. So we're not like in banana land of 21, 22, where we were seeing like $100 a terahash. I'm not sure if we'll ever see that kind of supply shock again, but I do think that machines will get more expensive from here. But important to look at when you're making a decision like this is what is my return going to look like on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or over the course of the term, right? So I think there's a lot of value to be had, especially with some of those old miners like the S19 XP that I purchased, but definitely still a lot of opportunity there to make a good amount of Bitcoin on the newer S21, S21 Pro, S21 XP. So smart buys as well.
So to confirm, and thank you for sharing, and I love the transparency, you got 3 S19 XPs?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. Let's just go right into number 2. So just in review, number 1 is the price per terahash is still very competitive. And while we may not see it at 20 or 21 levels, you don't want to wait a couple months and then maybe it doubles or triples on you, because there's nothing worse when you're going to go buy something and then you see the price go up and you're like, oh man, I knew better. I've been thinking about it. And that brings us into the hash rate. The second thing you were outlining is that, look, the hash rate is continuing to go up. So the longer you wait, break us down what that implication means.
So the longer you wait to mine Bitcoin, if the network hash rate continues to increase, and that's going to ultimately mean less rewards for you, right? So you have less percentage of the total pie of the network hash rate, and therefore less rewards. So in a way, it's kind of like we say this about even buying Bitcoin, right? A lot of folks look back, man, I wish I had bought it at $10 or $2,000 or $8,000. If only I had bought it then I'd be financially secure. So I think when we talk about that concept a lot of the times is just like the best time to buy obviously was probably yesterday, but the next best time to buy is today. And I feel like it's the same with mining. The network hash rate is continually increasing. So in order to really maximize your time and your value of the machine that you're buying, if you've been thinking about mining for a long time, the best time to do it is quite literally today.
It's always interesting when people say, oh, I wish I bought Bitcoin at 10 or 50, or even if they were mining, back there with their like desktop computer. But the reality of it is I actually don't know anyone personally who was buying Bitcoin back then in $10, $20, $50, who never sold. I know people who were buying it at $50, but then they sold. I know people who were buying it at $200, and then when it went to $2,000, they sold because they were up 10x, and they were like, and their only reference point was equity markets or commodities or bonds or some of the more TradFi, traditional TradFi vehicles. So they were like, I got 10x in 16 months. I have to get out. This is crazy. So it's always interesting to me to hear that too, because it's like, well, chances are you probably wouldn't have held. Yes, you would have bought, but you probably wouldn't have held. Therefore, you wouldn't have had incredible windfalls of wealth. I think about the hash rate similarly as like a train analogy. As the hash rate is growing, it's like the train is speeding up, and you want to get on the train while you still can and while it kind of like makes sense. So I also, I don't think we discussed, did we discuss hash rate growth on the episode with Colby?
I honestly can't recall. That was a little bit of a blur. Although I had my brain was a little constricted by the Santa hat. I think I had some blood flow constriction. So memory of that podcast not the best.
I don't know if we did, but it's the 7-day hit like 855 on hash rate index. I was looking the other day, and that's insane. Like it was at like 780 at the beginning of the year, and then the first week in February was already at 855.
It's been crazy to see it grow, especially since 21 in particular. I mean, I think even back in 21, correct me if I'm wrong. I was looking back on past tweets, but it could have been like $5,000 or $10,000 to mine a Bitcoin, 21, 22, something like that, right? So it was insanely cheap at the time. It's no longer there anymore.
No, it's no longer there. The mining economics have definitely changed as the competitiveness of the pubcos and everyone and Compass and more clients joining our ecosystem. And gosh, I feel like everyone now in Bitcoin mining has a BitAxe on their desk, which I know is not a windfall of total exahash. It's probably not even 1 exahash. But the point is there's more and more hashes coming online, which I think is why it's so important to make sure we're saying this now, because this is going to come out early next week. So what, 50, 60, 70, around the 17th or 18th of February. And it's just like, I think by April, people will look back who heard this episode and didn't take action and be like, oh man, I should have done that. So, okay, we've talked about price per terahash still being very nice. The overall global hash rate is going to continue to grow. So the sooner you get, part of the network, the sooner you add maybe to your fleet, just the better. And then the third part is one that is interesting, and there's more developing stuff, and I'll let you kind of touch upon it. I can touch upon it as well.
Yep.
Is the scarcity of miners. Do you think, and you mentioned this when we talked about price, do you think there's going to be a supply shock? Is there going to be a moment where it's like, hey, I really want to mine with Compass. I go on their website, and instead of seeing the normal, you can be up and mining in 48 hours, and these are the turnkey miners we have at these facilities. I wasn't in mining in 2021. So could you maybe even talk to me like what people would have maybe seen instead of, hey, get online in 48 hours, where there are 2-week waits, 1-month waits, 2-month waits. And then also, do you think that would replicate this cycle around?
Well, I think, going back to 21, there definitely was a supply shock. And I think that's been alleviated a little bit by some better supply chain, right, since that. But back then, people were putting in futures orders for the latest and greatest at the time were like the S19J Pros, the M30s, that sort of thing. And, it could be 3 or 6 months before you even saw them land. So you're putting in down a significant chunk of change to purchase the miners, and then you might not see them for a quarter, 2 quarters, half a year, right? That's a long, long time of your money sitting on the sidelines effectively and not being able to mine, number one. Number two is, back to number one, I suppose we're talking more about the miner supply shock. But the second point I'd like to make is about kind of lack of availability of power, right? So I was at Blockstream previous to Compass. We were running a 67 megawatt facility and something like 40 megawatts and change in Georgia. And we got inquiries all the time, especially from larger like institutional customers about wanting to place a significant amount of miners. And I say significant, I mean 5 megawatts, 10 megawatts, 20 megawatts. And it got to the point where I think by the end of 2022, going into 23, we had something like 200 megawatts of like pipeline in waiting, like people just wanting to plug in. And that was before AI and HPC had even entered the conversation. So I think the competition for power is higher than ever. And if we do really see a mania or like a frenzy with Bitcoin, reaching some ridiculous all-time highs, then it is very, very likely that it not only will it be difficult to find a miner at a reasonable price, but also very likely you might not have a place to plug it in. Because these sites have to be developed. And I think, Bitcoin mining as a concept does a great job of, using the containerized data center concept and deploying quickly versus, AI and HPC doing more of a brick and mortar, like tier 3, tier 2 data center with redundancies. But you can only build so fast, and you can only, find land so fast that's energized and ready to go.
Those are great points. And I think there's two things there. You said one of it's like, will there be miners? You're saying there probably will be, but nothing is guaranteed. If the price
Mm-hmm.
go to 250,000 by the summer, it's tough to say what would happen. And then
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is like, then would you even have a place to plug it in? Because you're saying that what you had how like what was the megawatt disparity? What was the gap? You said you had 200 in people looking to get online, and then what did you have to offer? Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary services. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success.
So we had our facilities fully deployed. So we had 67 megawatts and about 40 megawatts. So let's say 107 megawatts. So we needed about double what two times what our current capacity was, right? But we needed to be able to deploy that to house those customers, which is not realistic to be able to, I think, deploy that in a fast enough time frame. So that 2021, 2022 were very interesting. Too many miners, not enough power, right? And I can see the exact same thing, happening, especially with the competition from AI and HPC.
Yeah, that's something that Shannon, our chief mining officer, has outlined a lot. And he's just said, look, it's why Shannon doesn't think that the overall hash rate actually will crack a zeta hash or go to 1,000 exahash in 2025, because there's a lot of the pubcos too. You can see them. They're starting to diversify what I'm calling their compute portfolio. And they're saying, we can get so much more for our AI. And I think it was Brad James the other night on Talk Mining Tuesdays, which is an X space we do on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. now. So if you're around on Tuesdays at 8 p.m., join us on X at Compass Mining. He was saying though that for 1 megawatt of Bitcoin mining right now, he was saying it's like 3.5 million, the value of it. But he was saying 1 megawatt up for HPC or AI, it's worth 10 times that. So it's worth 30.5 million. So he's like, the money is there, and then you're not worried about maybe the Bitcoin cycle, right? Obviously, if you're a long time, Bitcoiner and you're mining and you know how to play the game, it could be different. But for some of these public companies who really need to worry about their stock value, I can see why they're looking at HPC AI and starting to go in that direction, right? So like you're saying, even in 2021, we didn't have that kind of, thirst for energy coming from a huge sector like AI is now. It is really like the fact that they're turning on nuclear generators should tell you everything that you need to know about what's happening there. So just a review, you've got price is still competitive. You've got hash rate is going up. Why not, get stuff online yesterday? And then you have number 3, we're hoping there's not going to be a supply shock, but in the event that there is, like you just done, getting S19s, S21s, getting whatever you can online now is good. You've also talked about some of the other tactics you can use to make mining more competitive. Do you want to dive into those?
Competitive in what way? Sorry.
Just financially competitive, just to make sure that you're covering all your bases.
If you're mining on your own.
Yeah, if you're mining, for people who are listening and want to start to mine with Compass, you've talked about some tax stuff.
Yeah, so I want to put this very clearly. This is not financial advice. I am not a tax professional, so this is all like buyer beware, do your own diligence. But I did speak to Nick over at the network firm, and he helped me kind of allay some of my fears about, how I could run this through a business and deductions that would be available to me. So obviously, if you're interested in Bitcoin mining, talk to a tax professional that you know and trust. But now it's my understanding that there are some benefits to buying these machines with a business. You can go and, I did this pretty recently, went to the Ohio Secretary of State online and paid $99 at midnight, and I had a license to do business by 8 a.m. I'm not even convinced that they actually did any due diligence of their own, but that's neither here nor there. They approved it immediately. But just start an LLC, run it basically as a sole proprietorship. And that way the Bitcoin that's mined will be effectively taxed as like your own personal income. It'll be a disregarded entity. But there seems to be some tax advantages with depreciation deductions and deductions of the hosting costs that could potentially lower your taxable income. So like I said, not financial advice. Talk to an actual tax guy, but make sure to ask him about those questions. And my assumption is that once you have that conversation, Bitcoin mining will make a whole lot more sense than just looking at it from the perspective of I'm buying these machines. What's the payoff period?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I love shouting out the network firm. You have Nick and Noah. They've been on the podcast multiple times. I think we've even talked about probably doing a space in March for people that are getting ready for tax season who are mining Bitcoin, because there's so many different things. And honestly, the tax code has changed, and because there was going to be something that happened at the end of 2024, which they ended up basically kicking the can down the curb or down the street. But the tax landscape is always changing. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's like an executive order around Bitcoin and taxes even before we get to the tax, to April 15th.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be retroactive for the entire year of 2024 or whether it would take, it would take hold next year in 2026, April 2026 for the year of 2025. All of that is to say the tax compliancy, the tax landscape when it comes to digital assets, crypto, and Bitcoin, especially specifically Bitcoin mining, is always evolving. So it's super important that you do work with a tax professional if you do have stuff up online. And I just want to cover Adam and my bases and say, please talk to people. I'm going to leave the network firm's info in the episode show notes. You can go check that out. And then one of the last things that I think you had mentioned was something that was really quite fascinating. I think when people think about Bitcoin, I think about Bitcoin mining. A lot of times it's just wrapping your head around what they're doing, probably zooming out, probably giving them a little bit of perspective. So that way it seems a little bit more intuitive as to why you need to, as this episode will be called, have Hash Online yesterday. And I'll let you take it away there.
Well, I want to touch on something too that I wanted to touch on previously as well, was that my Bitcoin strategy up till the time when I started mining, despite being in functionally in mining for a few years and not really doing it myself, so I feel like I'm walking the walk now, but whatever. Was that I was doing daily Bitcoin buys. Shout out River Financial, but I don't know if we do any free ads out here. But there you go. We just did one for the network firm, so River Financial, they're great people. But I was doing daily buys. I'll be totally transparent. I was doing $20 a day, nothing like super crazy. So that's about $600 a month, and I would try to reserve a little bit of cash for bigger buys, like when we saw some dips in 22, 23. But then I started doing the math on the S19 XPs and the hosting fees, because I'm hosting with Compass, the hosting fees associated with that. And I believe my hosting fees on a per miner basis are about $176 per month, right? So if I take that 176 divided by 2, that's, let's just say 2 miners, $352 per month. I found out that while I was spending $600 a month at Bitcoin's current price of 100,000, I was getting X amount of Bitcoin. But in mining with the 2 S19 XPs, now 3, I originally purchased 2 and then bought another one the next day. I could get the same amount of Bitcoin for $352. So you see how big of an impact that can have, over time, right? So if you just ran 2 of them, and you were doing the same thing that I was, you're saving an extra, $250 a month that can go elsewhere, right? Or you can, be like me and go buy a third miner, because why not? I was already spending 600, so why not spend 600? But a cool concept, I think, to go back to is when we were talking a little bit earlier about the best time to buy Bitcoin or to mine Bitcoin was obviously yesterday or 10 years ago, but the next best time is today, because we can't travel back in time. So I was watching, I can't remember the name of it. I was just watching it last night, but it's a documentary on HBO featuring, Adam Back, Peter Todd, about effectively who is Satoshi Nakamoto. And they had this great graphic on there where they were kind of going through what the halving is and the halvings over time. Then eventually the last Bitcoin's going to be mined in 2104. So long after I'm gone, unless there are some big leaps forward in longevity. Right. But it got me thinking, okay, with those 3 miners that I have right now, I'm mining roughly 0.0015 Bitcoin every 6.5, 7 days. Right. in 2068, that's going to be the block reward. So I'm able to get a block reward right now every 6 to 7 days. And what's interesting is when people talk about solo mining, like BitX, as you brought up earlier, is that why not just, throw it in the basement? It's a lottery ticket. Maybe you'll hit a block. So the reason I bring that up is if we increase our time preference and go out to 2068, I'm hitting the lottery every 7 days in 2068. So I think it's an interesting way to kind of think about that and why you should mine now, because it would have been great to be able to mine hundreds or tens of thousands of Bitcoin using a GPU back in 2010 or 2011. That's not where we are today, but the next best thing you can do is stack as much Bitcoin as you possibly can.
So that's about what, 10 or 11 halvings from now, and the reward is all the way down to 0.0015. Is that what you said?
Yeah, in 2068. So I just applied that every 4 years, have the reward every time.
That's pretty impressive, because I'm sure that if you zoom back to 2010, people were definitely so you're saying you're making that every week, right?
Yeah, roughly with 3S19 XPs, it's like 6.6 days. So yeah, every week. Let's just account for curtailment and fun things like that.
Yeah, fun things. Because I'm sure that when people were GPU mining, they were making, I don't know, maybe the block reward, because what's the block reward now? It's 3.125. So they were probably making that, I don't know, maybe every 2 days back in 2010.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
probably more than that.
What was that?
They were making like 50. They were making like 50 Bitcoin.
What was that? Website that was? I'm sorry, I'm trying to look it up right now. Is it that Bitcoin faucet where you could just go in and put your wallet in, and you would just receive 5 Bitcoins every time?
Yeah. If you filled out the reCAPTCHA,
Yeah. So it's like it's crazy the amount of Bitcoin that was out there, right? And that you could get your hands on. And yeah, it maybe hurts to look at it today and be like, man, I could have had all that Bitcoin. But where will you be in 2068 when you could be sitting there being like, man, Adam was right. I could have been mining every block reward every 7 days with 3S19 XPs.
It sounds crazy when you say like, oh, all the way up to 2068. First of all, that time will fly, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And second of all, if you are a Gen Z or millennial, honestly, anyone, and you have kids, they're going to be coming into a moment. And like, I think about my nephew, for example, he's 2 years old. So 2068, hopefully when my math is okay, it's 43 years. So when he's 45, getting, he will have had, if I had your same setup, I mean, I'll be giving him a year's worth. If I mine, right, the way you're mining, I would be giving him, he'd be winning a block every single week. If that Bitcoin is obviously, you still hold it. It goes back to that. If you can still hold it. Saying earlier, so many people were like, oh man, I was getting Bitcoin at $20, $50. I had a friend who had hundreds at $50, but he sold them. He made some profit. He moved on in life. And did some other
this might piss off the Bitcoin maxis, but I had a lot of Dogecoin back in 2017 when I first got in the interested broadly, I guess, in crypto. And I was doing the math on that. I could have had $5 million. I'd be sailing off in the sunset. But the reality is, to your point, is that no one actually does that. The only people that do that, that do that might lose their seed phrase for a while. They might have it on an encrypted drive, finally find it somewhere in a safe or in a desk, right? But to your earlier point, like once they get 20%, 30%, 50% gains, they're selling it for USD most likely or back to Bitcoin, right? In the Dogecoin example. It's very. I don't think they would have held on to it that long. But if you hold on to it long, when you're mining like this, then you have a lottery ticket every 7 days, in your example for your nephew.
Yeah, exactly. So when the nephew would be 45, or if you have kids who are 2 years old, when they're 45, and you held on to that Bitcoin, it's like, wow, Dad literally was hitting a block for me every single day, and he was just putting it into a fund, and he did that for a year, and then he had my like life fund, and that was going to be passed on to me, which is really quite amazing. And it's crazy to think that that's 43 years away, because Bitcoin's 15 years and change. So you're looking at 3 times the length of Bitcoin being around to have to hodl, when most people, if they hodl, once again, this is all not financial advice. If they hodl for longer than a cycle or 5 to 6 years, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I think if you continue to mine, and anyone who's continuing to mining today, you're still very early. This is why you want the hash online yesterday, right? Because I do think anything you mine today and you hold on to for 10 to 15 years, I think it's going to be generationally impactful when it comes to the financial side. And then I think it's also just going to be really cool, for example, for your kids to be like, you know, my dad was mining in 2025. Like he put 3 XPs online. Listen to this podcast he did, because you're gonna feel like Nostradamus, I think. But I guess only time will tell. But yeah, I love that idea of looking out to the block reward and just saying this is like figuring out how much you're mining today and figuring out where that aligns with the block reward. Because maybe if you only have 1 XP, maybe it's not the 2100, but still that's cool. Because when you do look at the block reward schedule, it is crazy. It is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets, I think even by 2040, I think
2040 is 0.19 Bitcoin every block.
0.19, so a fifth of a Bitcoin.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And we're going to be sitting back there being like, man, why wasn't I mining when it was 3.125, right? Just have the same conversation ad nauseum over and over. Seems to happen cyclically.
3.125 will look like the 25 block reward, right? Which people are like, oh, yeah, that's crazy. So anyways, Adam, I want to thank you for coming on. I think last time I left your LinkedIn for people. Is that a good place? And maybe your email to contact you?
Yeah, of course. LinkedIn and email is probably preferable. I'd probably go on that more than LinkedIn. But email will work, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to leave that in the show notes. I'm going to leave also the information for the network firm. And I just want to thank you for coming on. I think this is a really important conversation to continue to have throughout the spring. I do think we're going to have a very hot summer, both in hash rate, both in difficulty, both in Bitcoin price. Once again, that is no financial advice. That's just kind of what I am seeing from where I'm
hoping.
Exactly. A lot. So, Adam, thank you for hopping on today. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe. Listening to this on podcast platform, please subscribe. Make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube at Compass Mining. And yeah, Adam, thank you once again for the time.
Thanks again, Jared. I appreciate it. Hopefully it was better than the first one. I feel like I got the nerves out on the first one.
Oh yeah, this is good. You're like a pro now.
Perfect.